I love fantasy. What can I say? And the idea of taking a story I've come up with in my head and then just making a diorama, that's a little floppy, of it is just incredible, really. So I was bored at work a few months back. And when I'm bored, I usually invent stories. So, to be fair, at work, it's mostly a manual job, so I have time to let my mind wander. I'm just packing books, and I can think about other things while I do that. So, I really came up with a story in about one day. I really got in the zone, and I just cranked it out. And then recently, I remembered that story, and I was like, there's a few scenes that I really love that would make some great dioramas. So that's what I did. I'm thinking this will probably be happening in the next few weeks too. There's some other scenes that I really love. They aren't particularly great. They just really, I don't know, I have a connection with them, I guess. So I'll be doing that. I started out by building a model from balsa wood. And I was doing these calculations to convert this actual blueprint diagram thing for a real biplane into a model size that would fit with about an inch tall mini, and it was just like, there's gotta be a better way. What is there that would be way better? Like, you could just buy a model, but I don't want to spend the money. Or, like, there's gotta be some way that you can a 3D printer. So I printed off a model for a Sopwith camel, which is a pretty classic design. Yeah, so I basically printed that off and assembled it. But while I do this, I'll flesh out that story a little bit more for you, just to give you a better idea. So there's two main cultures. Cultures isn't the word I want. Countries, I guess. Groups of people. There's the techies, and the mages. The techies really hate the mages. They want to eradicate magic from the entire world. And so a while back there was a war where the mages all got pushed back onto an island. And not just mages, a few of the non-magic people who are sympathetic to the mages' cause also went with them. And so since then, the techies have been continually bombarding the island with attack. That's been going on for years, so the whole culture of the mage society has really developed around this war. Steve is the main character, who is the mini in the diorama. And he's become a captain. He's worked his way up through the ranks, starting out as a scrapper. I'll get into that in a minute. And he's then become a pilot, and now he actually leads like a squadron of pilots. And as a pilot, they use basically captured techie gear and or their own gear that's based off the techies' designs. And they also, but those are modified to use their own magical abilities, so fireballs, and they have some limited flying abilities that can basically enhance their gliding skills. So they're a step behind the techies in technology, but because of their magical gifts, they're pretty even in the air in a fight. So Steve is a captain, but this scene is not of Captain Steve. This is Steve the Scrapper. So the Scrappers are the people who run around after a major conflict, and they'll go and look through the water and try to find any crashed techie planes that are still in reasonable condition. So here in this diorama in particular, I have Steve using telekinesis to lift out this biplane out of the water to be analyzed for the mage's research, basically, the R&D. And so this moment is particularly important to Steve because this is the first C-17, I think is what it's called, plane that's been recovered. And when the first of a plane is recovered, it gets put in the wharf walkway. I'm not convinced that's the right name for it, but that's what it is for now, working name. The wharf walkway is basically the Hall of Fame for the scrappers. And every day to work, they basically walk past all these ancient planes, crashed and burnt and whatever else. But that's their legacy, really. So Steve has a special spot in his heart for the scrappers, and they feel the same to him. What you just saw, I don't know if it was all quite clear, but basically I took plastic wrap and put it on the wings with some tacky glue, which got a little bit of gloppy stuff over the fuselage and propeller, but that kind of makes it look like it's been stuck in the mud down below the surface for a little bit. And then I used green spray paint to just make it green. You can also see I painted on the Techie's symbol on the wing, kind of like old planes have, or they probably still do have, like the American Star, or the United Kingdom has a target looking thing. It's probably not what it's called. And then I needed to make Steve. So I wanted Steve's position to be basically spot on. Like I wanted him like clenching his fists, like he's straining to lift this plane out of the water through telekinesis. But it's very difficult to find the exact mini you need. So I basically found a body that was like this crouched, tensed position. I think it was a monk. And then I also found a mini with like his hands, palms open, hands open, which wasn't quite what I wanted, but it was the best I could find. So he's got hands for another mini, and then I didn't like the head. I'm still not convinced I found the right head, but it's a closer head. Like he's a younger guy, but yeah, I don't know. I can never really picture my characters' faces very well, so yeah, it works. So I got 2 donors and a torso, and then he's standing in a rowboat because this is out in the middle of this big channel. So he needs to be in a rowboat, and I was going to have his mentor sitting in the rowboat with him, but the mini I found that was sitting down, it was one of the wheelchair minis, but it didn't quite fit with the rowboat, so I decided, you know what, he's not going to be carrying this plane all the way back to land using telekinesis. There's going to be a bigger barge nearby that'll actually carry it back, and so his mentor's on that barge. And so I printed the minis. And I mean, just look at it. I don't even know what to say. It's kind of pathetic, really. I don't know what happened. 2 theories. I didn't save the final version because at some point I accidentally put duplicates of all the minis in, and so there were 6 minis instead of 4 or something like that. Or second theory, and I think this is probably a little bit more likely, is in the future, turns out me having an easy time of printing these minis had some serious repercussions in the future. So future me came back and changed the program so that it didn't work nicely. Yeah, I know. Okay, I definitely messed up the file. But it's salvageable. It's salvageable. I mean, these are salvage guys, right? Like, I can salvage a rowboat if they can salvage a plane, right? So I just cleaned up the rowboat. I scraped out the half a guy that was standing in it, and scraped off his legs off the bottom. I used a clipper like to cut sprues and just snapped it off, but that resin really hurts. It's really hard. When you snap it, it like goes flying. So either you can lose the piece halfway across the basement or really mess up your hand, so I went with messing up my hand. It did not feel good, but hands still work, so that's good. And then I just glued Steve together. I chopped off the hands and put on new hands, and I chopped off his head and put on a new head. And hopefully I can figure out something to do with those now headless and handless minis. And also that half a torso. And then I just painted the minis and rowboat, nothing fancy, just basic paint. Really blocked out the colors since things were taking longer than I expected. Then I just broke the plane. It's a crash, so I wanted it to look broken, but I didn't want it to be like all grimy because the salvage crews go out a few days after the battle, usually at most. So there wouldn't be time for like algae and nasty sea stuff to grow on it and for like anything major. So it's just broken. So I broke off the wheels because I figured when a plane comes like landing on the water kind of crash, wheels are pretty much going to hit first. I also broke, what wing was it? The right side, basically sheared that off. The bottom of the second wing down I sheared off basically and really messed up the top part of it. I figured the right side hit harder. And I also bent the left side in half and chopped off a chunk of the tail. I snapped off part of the propeller since that's going to be spinning at a high speed and when it hits that water. I just kind of broke things so that it looked like it crashed. Kind of made it up as I went, but I think it looks pretty good. And then I went on to the resin pour. So for my resin, I bought this little box of resin. It comes with these two little bottles, which are smaller than I hoped, but that's really about what I expected, I guess. And then it comes with these little cups to pour things. The cup broke. One of them broke pretty much right away. I think I squeezed it too hard, but I just put like a line of hot glue and that seals it up pretty well. It also comes with these nice little stir stick things, which are pretty handy, and the resin doesn't really stick to them, which is nice. So then I just covered a flat piece of plastic with some plastic wrap so that it'd come off really easily, and I used a piece of Dutch Tupperware as the form, and I just ran a bead of hot glue around the edge. And I think it'd be better not to use the plastic wrap. The plastic wrap worked fine when it came to not sticking to the epoxy, but the hot glue really stuck to the saran wrap, which kind of made it a pain to pull off. So instead I would say use a thicker piece of plastic that the epoxy still won't stick to that, shouldn't, and the hot glue won't stick as much to it either, since saran wrap or plastic wrap is really thin. It's hard to get it to pull off with the hot glue. I also added in some alcohol ink. I wanted the water to be like a greenish bluish color, so I just used the two colors I had and tinted it a little bit. I think I should have gone a little bit darker since it's still pretty see-through, but I wasn't really sure how it would look once it's set up. It looks about the same when it sets as when it hasn't set. And I kept checking it for 2 hours or something. It was supposed to set in 45 minutes and it just wasn't setting. So I kept checking it and I tried to draw little waves in it, but it was too runny. So instead I went to bed because it was bedtime. In the morning I came down and it was set. It was still a little bit rubbery, so I put in a few little wave lines, but it wasn't very good. You can kind of tell they're there, but it would have been better if it had set, if it had been like kind of runny still. But I think it's because it's in the basement. It's pretty cool down here, and maybe the alcohol ink messed with the setting of the epoxy, or maybe I didn't quite measured it evenly enough or whatever. And then I just trimmed off the little edges from the weird ridges from the hot glue, and there was also a leak that was kind of crazy and stressful, but didn't go ever over the table thanks to the plastic wrap. So plastic wrap is helpful to cover things with so that it doesn't make a big mess, because that wouldn't be good. It almost made a huge mess. And there it is. Still need to figure out a way to get that to stay nicely, but as a whole, great project. It was actually my first time using epoxy, so I was super excited about that, and I think it turned out really great. I think, looking back, not using plastic wrap would have helped, and also getting rid of this weird lip. That was because of the container I used would be better. I also should really go in and polish this up, but I don't have the time or patience or equipment to do that. But you could probably get a really beautiful clear edge on there. That'd look really nice. Yeah. So if you'd like to see more content like this, or maybe hear more about Steve's story, please let me know down below if that's something that interests you. And consider subscribing if you'd like to see more dioramas, terrain building, mini painting, that sort of thing. I appreciate it that you've watched this long. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoy this, please hit the like button, and with that, I'll see you in the future.